bit of a follow-up from July 4th. So today we will have different issues in a very practical way. First of all, I'd like to thank the people who put this event together, ACRI, together with Rabbi Posner helped out today. And thank you for Zohar for taking the video. We'll start with Rabbi Posner, who will open up and give us instructions and guidelines on how to judge different kosher symbols.
Thank you. That was a very ambitious mandate I just got there. I'd like to do a little bit differently from what most speakers do, and rather than saving your questions for the end, pop up with questions anytime you feel like it. Okay, I'd like to start with that language I just happened to come across yesterday, where that ever brings on the pasuk, which in this week's parsha we speak about that the Yidden were enslaved in Mitzrayim, which in Zohar says that Levanim, the bricks, refers to Libin Hilchos, clarifying the halachas. So it ever brings on this that the Sifri says on the pasuk, that man does not live by bread alone. So the Sifri says that the lechem, the bread, is a reference to halacha, and the moitzi pi Hashem is a reference to Haggadah. And the Rebbe explains that the lechem, the bread, is halacha. The moitzi pi Hashem refers to the pnimis of Torah, the inner esoteric part of Torah, the light of Torah, which is hidden within Torah. And you, in order to properly appreciate the halacha, you need to have it infused with the light of the moitzi pi Hashem of the Ein Sof. That's the meaning of Libin Hilchos, clarifying the halacha, is bringing the light into the halacha, bringing the chayes of Chassidus into the halacha. This happens to relate directly to many of the issues involved in hechsherim. Basically, what we're talking about when we talk about hechsher or supervising agencies, there's a Shulchan Aruch which has halachas of kashrus of foods, heter, Cholov, arubis, all these different kind of halachas that you learn about. Shechita, blood, licha, salting, whatever, bugs, which we'll get to later, eggs, everything has its halachas. Which that we need to know those halachas simply in our own home, in our own kitchen. And then there's a whole separate focus, I guess, of agencies who go into plants, factories, retail establishments, and make sure that the food is kosher, and then certify it for the benefit of the public to say that this, in fact, is something that you can be eating according to halacha. So one of the questions that we need to ask is, in Shulchan Aruch, there are many, there are different opinions about different things. And sometimes we hold like one opinion, sometimes like another opinion. Much of Shulchan Aruch is talking about not ideally how things should be, but what happens if. What happens if by mistake you stuck your spoon into your fleshika pot? There's a whole set of rules depending on how big the spoon in the pot, and when it was used, and what was in the pot, and all these halachas. So most of halacha is really about b'diavad, things which happened already, and now how serious is it? We have to throw everything out? What can we do about it? How do we kasher it? And so on. So all of these agencies that are going into these places, it's very easy to walk in and make sure everything should, this is the way things ought to be, everything should be kosher. But what are we going to accept? Will we allow this part? Will we allow that part? Will we allow you to use this equipment? Will we allow you to kasher this way? Will we allow you to kasher it that way? What happens if there's a mess up? What happens if this? So a lot of it has to do with the attitude that the supervising agency has going into a situation. For example, I heard from a person who was in charge of one of these agencies where he says that they could not, a certain kind of product that they could not certify. They could not find anyone who makes it in a way that they could certify it. What was the problem? It's available, this product is available with many other hechsherim, with of all sorts. Why can't they do it? He says the problem is that typically these products are made in these big plants, not necessarily is all of it kosher, or if you want to make something par, for example, not everything is par, so you have to kasher out the equipment before you can run your par run or your kosher run. And typically, very often we'll do these things like on a Monday, because in order to kasher equipment, it has to be down for 24 hours. So if they're closed on the weekend, you come on Monday morning, you run your kashering, you run your kosher product, and it's fine. But a lot of these places run 6 or 7 days a week, 3 shifts a day or something, and they don't have downtime. So then, and therefore, you can't find a place that you could kasher, that's available to kasher in order to run the product. So how does everyone else do it? Like I said, this product is available. How does everyone else do it? He says, well, they rely on those opinions where b'diavad, under extenuating circumstances and so on. You don't need to have a full 24 hours. It's enough for a shorter period of time, or it's enough if you do other things to be pipement. We'll get into the details. So there's other ways, workarounds to avoid this problem having to be down 24 hours. So I said, well, why does it work for them to do that and it doesn't work for you? And he says, the reason it works, and nowadays when he goes into these places to talk about them, and he says, we need to have 24 hours out, all the other rabbis don't need it, why do you need it? Which is a good question. So he said the difference is that the way they look at it, they need to get this product. They need it. And therefore, if this is the only way we can get it, we can consider that a b'diavad or a shasat chak, extenuating circumstances, we could rely on these other workarounds. That's from the way I look at it, we don't need this product. If we don't get it kosher, so we'll do without it. It won't happen. So it's am I going to go and produce this product relying on this? I say this is the Liban Hilchasa, the difference. The halacha is true that you could do it this way, you could do it that way. But what kind of situation are you in? Do you want to rely on this fallback workaround, or do you want to do it right or not do it at all? That's and then the Moisei Hashem of it, the perspective that you bring to it can make a big difference. The truth is, I was looking very much forward to hearing what I'm going to say, because the idea of actually someone lifting the veil and telling the secrets of what goes on behind all of these hashgachas is something I really would like to know. And so I was hoping that, when it's over, I'll find out. The truth is that there's a lot of good news there behind these products. I actually listened to the recordings of our July 4th session. I listened to it yesterday to see what were the loose ends, to find out what we need to maybe clarify. And I remember we walked out of there, I was very confused. All this, got all this information, I don't know what to do about it, and what's going on. But I listened to it a second time, listening to it, going through it a second time, it actually made a lot of sense. And it wasn't really, it wasn't as confusing as one might think. I should mention, by the way, one of the things which did stir up a lot of confusion was Rabbi Fishman speaking about problems in bruised chickens. So I brought a handout here from the CRC website, which has actually some pictures and whatever. So, one of the things which came up there, was mentioned, and something you should be aware of, is that, speaking in America, at least, generally speaking, most hechsherim are on a certain basic level, elementary level, they're all fine. Not all of them, but most. Most of those which you see commonly. And the reason for this is because there's a system which is developed which sort of keeps everybody more or less on the same page. Actually, this was the system of maintaining levels of kashrus was actually being pointed at as a model to be used by other kinds of interests that want to maintain standards to try to copy the kashrus model. Meaning, for example, organics or gluten-free. So one way of doing it is having the government try to enforce these things, define standards and government inspections and penalties, whatever. But then you might have the government getting involved in everything under the sun. And there are those who are saying that this can be done privately, the same way that kashrus is done privately. The government can't really get involved in most things because it's matters of religious things. They can't really can't get into these things, and yet it works. Why does it work? There are three elements to it. One of them is the fact that most agencies are dependent upon others. I mean, the OK, for example, cannot supervise all of the products they do without allowing certain OU products, or CRC products, or whatever, into their facilities as ingredients, and vice versa. So everyone's dependent on everyone else. Everybody sees what everyone else is doing because very often they'll be giving supervision for the same products or different products in the same plants. So they have to be very open with each other. What's going on with this product? We have a manufacturer who wants to use this ingredient. It's under your supervision. What's the story? They have to share the information, and they see they're inevitably looking over each other's shoulder all the time. Nobody wants to be in the situation where there's going to be. If you remember, was it 20 years ago when they had the big vinegar scandal, where they discovered that vinegar was coming in from France, I think, and it was actually being derived from wine. And that vinegar was being used in all of the Hamisha products and for chrein or whatever, this thing that has vinegar as an ingredient. And it happened to be that was one agency which, for some reason, messed up on this, and everybody else was relying on it, so it was all over the place. They don't let that happen a second time. So they know that if they mess up, everybody else is going to have to deal with it, because then they have to, all their products and which they certified are all affected by it. So there's so that's one of simply the fact that they're all connected to each other keeps forces a certain standard of compliance. The second thing is this actually. They've actually not just left it to sort of develop organically, but there's an organization called ACRI, actually, Association of Kashrus Organizations or something like that, where they actually get together periodically, representatives of many of the kosher organizations, and they discuss these things, they discuss issues, they discuss what standards should be, how do you deal with these kind of situations to make sure that everyone's on the same page. Any organization which is accepted as a member there has to meet certain standards, and then they constantly talk about how do we upgrade standards. Oh, I had this incident in a plant which we never saw before. You should be aware of it. Let's all of us put in safeguards into play to make sure that it doesn't happen to any of us. That also keeps them. The fact that they actually discuss things. What should the standard be in this kind of shiloh? Which opinion should we follow? How should we deal with it? And the third thing is the public. This book I was reading said that 8% of the kosher consuming public, I think 8% is Orthodox. But it's a very vocal 8%. The fact that anyone sees something that doesn't make sense, if you see a product that says on it parv and look at the ingredients and it has whey in it or something, you're going to get on the phone and call. So it's very, very powerful. So on a certain level, if an agency is respectable at all, they're going to meet a certain minimum standard. It happens to be that here in Chicago we are blessed with a kashrus organization, which is not just a business, but really is there for public, to serve the public, and provides many services which have become like the universal standard. Anybody, anywhere, wants to know whether a kashrus agency meets minimum standards of being reliable, they go to the CRC list. CRC lists many, has on their website a list of many different hashgachas and agencies around the country, around the world. If they're there, you know that they meet a certain standard. If they're not there, then that might mean that they're not acceptable. Might mean that for some reason they just haven't made it on the list. You then may want to call and ask, what about this one or that one? But right there, to get you started, like who's not reliable, they're not on the list. You have to start asking questions. It happens to be that the latest edition of the Kosher Supervision Guide has merely 1,427 different supervising agencies in it. So we're obviously not going to discuss all of them. To make matters worse, this list was published in September of 2018. It's like 3 months old. It's already outdated. There are new symbols out there which are not listed here. So it's impossible to really to address all of them. Okay, so the one thing in America, you have a very good system as far as basic kashrus. When you go anywhere else, as an American, it's hard to believe the chaos that goes on in other places. Places where there's no symbols on things and there's just lists and things. You have to, in Europe, it's very confusing. In Eretz Yisrael, it's even worse. Eretz Yisrael, there are many hashgachas, and many products come from Israel with many different hashgachas, and for the most part, you can't rely on them. And I'll tell you why, and think of the mentality of this. In America, when you look at the way a kashrus agency goes in typically to give an action on a plant, the plant is interested, they go to the plant, they say, okay, here, these are the procedures which need to be in place in order to make sure that the product comes out acceptable to our standards. We need to be able to have access to your ingredient list, anything which comes into the plant, we have to know what it is, we need to know what line it runs on, this, that, and this, you do this, it's a fail-safe system, nothing can go wrong. If there's any deviation, we need to know about it right away. Then you have a mashgiach who comes in depending on what the product is, every day, once a week, once a month, once in 3 months, just to make sure that the system is running. But the system is designed, it's set up to begin with, to produce the right outcome. It's and normally, companies, big companies especially, they have their suppliers, they have their vendors, they have where they get their stuff from, and there's a paper trail for everything, and they don't just run out and buy something and throw it into the system. So typically, it's the process which assures that it's going to be kosher. The mashgiach is just there to keep an eye on things to make sure. In Eretz Yisrael, it doesn't work that way at all. For the most part, the mentality is we have a mashgiach there. It's his job, be there on the spot, to make sure that everything is right. And he has to keep an eye on everything, who's walking in the door and out the door, and who's doing this and who's doing that, and stuff. They don't have that. It's a different kind of mentality. In America, it makes sense. You set up a process, and the process runs. It's just, I think it's different between Eastern and Western culture. I don't know. It's different. It's totally different mentality. So it's very hard to keep control if they don't have a process that's running on its own in the right direction that you just need to adjust once in a while. It's very hard to keep on top of it. The fact that you're dealing with Jews in great measure probably doesn't make it any easier because every Jew's a chacham and knows better, which is another level of problem. So that's. So it happens to be in America we have, in terms of basic kashrus, we're much better off than anywhere else. The problem is that for us, basic kashrus doesn't work. Because basic kashrus is involved, doesn't meet certain standards which we look for as basics. Something which has on a CRC or a Chav K or an OU or an OK, all the major things are just about any other. The smaller regional ones which are acceptable. They're not Cholov Yisrael, they're not Pas Yisroel, they're not Bishul Yisrael necessarily. Be careful how you say that. And so it's nice to know that it's good as a basic level of kashrus, and you're helping someone to part a miftzah kashrus to get someone to keep kosher. You can tell them to use all these symbols, but then what do you do yourself? How do you know what's acceptable to which meets these requirements as well? The problem gets more complicated because there are different definitions of what these terms mean and how to apply them. And as I was mentioning before, for example, something which affected us here in the Chicago area, talking about Pas Yisroel. So there was a bread manufacturer which was under the CRC, and it was Pas Yisroel. And then the company sold out to another larger organization which already had the OU. So they switched everything to be consistent, have one Kosher agency, so they put it all to the OU. The OU's standard to be considered Pas Yisroel is a higher standard than the CRC standard for defining things as Pas Yisroel. And therefore, the OU no longer certifies it as Pas Yisroel. The truth is that the OU standard it's probably easy for them to maintain that standard because they don't really care if it's Pas Yisroel or not anyway, so it's not Pas Yisroel. But most of the, I suppose you call them the Haredi or the Frumer higher level kinds of hashgachas don't hold from the OU standard for Pas Yisroel either. So if you're getting Pas Yisroel with some Hasha coming out of Borough Park or whatever, or Williamsburg, it may not be to the OU standard either. It's not that the CRC was somehow relying on some kind of weak standard. When this issue came up, I consulted with a lot of people whose opinions we respect and follow. And when I told them this is what the OU says, that in order for it to be Pas Yisroel, we have to do this, that, and the other thing, and they just laughed. I said, I'd like a response. Is this right or wrong, or how do you respond? The point to this line here and Shulchan Aruch, this, that, and the other thing. How do you respond to that? And he wouldn't even respond to it. He just laughed at it and just dismissed it like it was such a far-out way of interpreting this halacha that he just didn't deal with it. So it's not easy to say, okay, this is tier 1, this is tier 2, this is tier 3, and we just stick to tier 1, because within each things which seem to be more or less similar. Okay, is there a big difference between the two? Probably not, but some things which OU is more machmer, some things which okay is more machmer. So this creates a very frustrating situation because then you need to know in each thing what is their particular standard on a particular thing. It happens to be one of the big issues that comes to mind for most people usually is, especially when you're looking at milchika products, which is only for historical reasons people think this way, you want to know how is the equipment kasher? Is it 212 or not? Okay, well, this is a question which actually affects anything which is kasher. It has nothing to do with dairy products, just that was the first time someone thought of the question. But in the case of dairy products, I think it's safe to say generally that pretty much anything which is produced in America is in fact kasher at 212. I don't think you have to worry about that. There was a time when you had to keep track of this brand, that brand, the other brand. Right now, that doesn't seem to be an issue at all. And the truth is that over the years, thanks to the things which I mentioned before, the fact that there's everyone's dependent on everyone else, and there's a conscious effort being made to make universal standards across the board. So all acceptable kasher agencies are generally making their policy to try to kasher, whenever they have to kasher equipment, to kasher it at 212. So this is, everyone thinks of average, Chabad, we're at 212. It's not really, generally not a big issue. if there was a particular item in a particular place where the type of equipment was such that it couldn't be done, the likelihood of our finding out about it is very small. There's no way that that anyone can dig that deeply into every product unless you happen to know the guys in the shgiach in that plant. But basically, it's not really a big, not really a big concern. Okay, with regard to Bishul Yisrael, this is already much more of a problem. It's complex. First of all, Bishul Yisrael is not a hiddur. You know, on Cholov Yisrael, we hold that it's absolute, and others have a heter from here, from there, that doesn't have to be Cholov Yisrael. In Bishul Yisrael, it's a din shulchan aruch that food cooked by a guy can't be eaten, subject to certain rules, and everybody holds to that. So while we could say that the OU is not concerned about Pas Yisroel, for example, we cannot say that the OU is not concerned about Bishul Yisrael. Of course, it's concerned about Bishul Yisrael. It's a clear din shulchan aruch, and they're following shulchan aruch. The problem comes in terms of how is it applied. In other words, Bishul Yisrael, literally the word Bishul means cooking. How does one define cooking? Is any kind of food preparation involved in heat considered cooking, or is it only cooking where you take a pot and you put it on a fire and you boil it up? So if you're using other sorts of heat sources, if you're using steam, if you're using electric coils, is that considered cooking? So the question, what do we define cooking? The question is, another rule involved in Bishul Yisrael is that it only applies to things which are not eaten raw. So if it's something raw, there's no problem. There's no problem if it's cooked by guy. So apples are eaten raw, so you don't have to worry about Bishul Yisrael and applesauce, because apples can be eaten raw. It's still a non-issue. But that in itself, sometimes certain products you have to wonder: are they eaten raw, or how do you determine that? Everybody keeps always asking well, you know, now everyone eats fish raw because everyone eats sushi. Is that enough to say, well, fish doesn't need to be Bishul Yisrael? And then the third question is it only applies to things which are ilal shulchan aruch, things which are fit to be literally are served at a king's table. Nowadays, this was mentioned back in July 4th as well. Nowadays, we don't have kings. How do you define what's fit? What foods are fit? Are ilal shulchan aruch and have the requirement of Bishul Yisrael, and which don't? So, you know, nowadays, it's hard to say that some people will eat things other ones. You know, it's very hard to define that. And the big question is whether it applies to the final dish or whether it applies to the food that's being discussed. So, for example, Bishul Yisrael, when it comes to tuna fish, one could easily make the case that nobody would serve canned tuna at any kind of fancy affair, certainly not to a king, and therefore canned tuna doesn't require Bishul Yisrael. But tuna as an item can be served at fancy affairs, should be subject to it, and therefore the fact that you happen to be doing it in an inferior way is not enough to exempt it from the requirements of Bishul Yisrael. So this is again some hold this way, some hold that way. We tried to hold to the higher standard, which means again that just because you see an OU on a can of tuna fish, just on this issue of Bishul Yisrael is a problem. So there's another whole issue as far as with kind of hashgacha is needed, which is the OU there has a fairly unique position on the lenient side. Okay, so what are you supposed to do? You could grow your own food in your backyard, and then make sure to check it very carefully for bugs. And then you're home safe. Again, remember if you're getting fruits, you have to make sure they're not harmful. You still have some laws you have to work with. be able to get up here and rattle off a list of hechsherim which you can follow them blindly is difficult. It's, besides the fact that it's simply hard to say that, and certainly to give a comprehensive list, their names are very confusing. There's, for example, you have the Taktik of Rav and the Taktik of Bezdin are two different hashgachas. Don't confuse them. I had to mention about this one. I'll tell you something else. If you look them up, if you look up in the book, any hashgacha, and I'll give you the names of the rabbis involved, and the websites, and the phone numbers, and the addresses, and you look at it and you say, a lot of them are called Chabad. It doesn't mean anything. There is an organization here which is called Chabad, and you look through their certificates that they give a hashar on not Pas Yisroel. It's shocking how that could be, but it's there. It's a fact, you know. So you can't just say, oh, it's Chabad, it's okay. Many of these are local organizations where the Chabad Shliach there is trying to provide a basic level of kashrus for his community. So he's certifying the thing as kosher for people to eat. That doesn't necessarily mean he would eat it himself, because it's not saying he's saying here for basic kashrus in the community. You got to provide. So just saying stick to Chabad isn't going to work either. It's a big challenge to sorting it through and figuring out where it is. Any questions?
Where is the book from?
What?
Where is the book from? Where do you get the book?
This book is published in a thing called Kashrus magazine, and they publish a magazine like once every 2 months. And when this first started 30 years ago, they had a page of once a year with 15, 20 of the symbols. But over the years, it's grown to this. And now they publish every 2 years. If you subscribe, but once every 2 years, they also include this as part of your subscription. Or you can buy it from them. You go to kashrusmagazine.com or something, you can go online and you can order it. I see it says $15.95 on it. But it's available.
Are all of those
No,
reliable?
they limit here to, they were able to establish that they're Orthodox rabbis. It means they don't have any conservative rabbis in here or traditional. But what the standards are, they do not address the standards at all. That's once you know who it is, then you can contact them and ask them. For example, like I mentioned before, this Chabad name thing, which Michal, I think the Rebbe did not want Chabad to have its name on Kosher Michal. I don't know how that happened, but you can contact them and say, do you certify whatever, if he says, yeah, we do not Pas Yisroel too, then you know basically you have to be ready to ask questions. If you get it, they actually have in the beginning, they explain how to ask questions. They say, give me the information, and here, know what your question is, prepare what you want to ask. Say, at least you can find out when you see these funny symbols. Who is it? You can at least go further from here, or if you know who it is, okay, I don't know what you're talking about. But if you know what it is, you can look up and say, oh, that's Peru. Oh, that's Peru, then we know what it is. Okay, fine. Probably tell which product it is. But of course, it is artichokes, right? So you see, and no, it's not good. So it's very useful in that sense. Yes?
So usually when you see an organization like CRC rating or making opinions on other organizations, you hear words like recommended, not recommended. But once, 2 or 3 years ago, I actually saw an email about a particular hot dog, and they said, no matter what leniencies you're looking at, this just isn't kosher. When do you get to that level?
When they're confident they won't be sued. The question was, when can they actually say straight out it's not kosher rather than saying not recommended? And that's really what it's about. You don't can force you to recommend anything. So you can say we don't recommend it, but to say it's not kosher, how can you prove it? In that case, they must have really had the goods on it. Probably was a printing mistake or something. The company was ready to, it was not kosher. All right, anything else? All right.
So according to what you said, if you see an American hechsher, and it's filtered and it says Cholov Yisrael. Does that mean it's most likely to do well?
If it's called, so yeah, I don't think for years I haven't come across or heard about that being an issue. Caching things at 212 itself is kind of like, I don't know if I can tell you, the equipment is very complicated, it's very big and complex, and how do you monitor it? And at what point in the system is it 212 and was it all the way through? There's all kinds of technical details in it, but basically the goal is, for all Kosher agencies, to do kashering at that so-called misnomer 212, so a whole other subject. But that's not the issue we need to be worrying about, I don't think.
So in terms of the Chalad Yisrael, now OU is giving Chalad Yisrael hechsher.
Excuse me?
OU is giving Chalad Yisrael hechsher.
Mhm.
Is this reliable?
Question about OU Cholov Yisrael Hechsher. OU products in America, which are Cholov Yisrael, I think should be okay. The problem is that a lot of the OU Cholov Yisrael stuff is not produced here in America. If it's OU Cholov, it's probably stuff which is being imported from Israel, and it's very complicated. It's very hard to get a straight answer. I don't know if the OU themselves knows the answer to whether they know the answer to whether they have the same standards in Israel as they have in America.
It could be Europe.
Also a problem.
So if
By the way, I
it's
just happened to read yesterday about a chocolate plant in Europe where the mashgiach who went in there was the mashgiach for the OU, happened to be a Lubavitcher, but he was the mashgiach for the OU, and he was not happy with how they were going to cashier the plant to run the kosher run, so he said he's not doing it. So the company then went to the OK and asked them to certify this product, and they said the way you're planning to cashier it, what you're willing to do is not good enough for us. We won't certify the product either. So then they found some Chassidish European hechsher who gave the hechsher on it what they were doing. So it's not, don't think, it says, some kind of fancy names, Arab, whatever, whatever, from Abdekat, whatever, means that it's better hechsher, not necessarily so. Here the OU and OK refused to do it, and this other hechsher did. But the trouble is, I think it's more the problem is where it's sold in Europe. Europe's probably just doing their own stuff. And it's very involved with the local things, and it's officially you think it's one organization should have one standard. Maybe it is, maybe not. It's very hard to hear different things from different people. Don't have a straight answer. What's it?
You talk about canned foods and Bishul Yisrael, from canned beef, Bishul.
You know about canned foods, okay. Okay, some canned things do not require Bishul Yisrael, obviously, right? Canned fruits, right? Peaches, apples, whatever, not a problem. Whether canned fruits, canned other foods, whether they require, you have to ask your Rav. You should, our ACRI recommendation of these things is that you should get things which are in fact Bishul Yisrael.
So canned beans, like a
What?
bean which has an OU, not very Bishul. Chickpea.
No, okay, it depends. Okay, there are certain things which are not, certain types of foods which are not Bishul. Corn, for example, is a very popular example. So canned corn would not be an issue. Whether beans are considered Bishul or not, some say yes and some say no. Because there's another place that says this way, it says that way. Rabbi Hertz, what do you say about canned beans? What? Just stick with Bishul Yisrael. What? Huh?
OU canned black beans, canned chickpeas are Bishul Yisrael or not? Like the Skokie brand.
No. Okay, they're going to rely on the fact that it's canned, it's not a little shulchan aruch.
So it's steamed.
Or whatever. No, not only because it's steamed, because canned food is not a little shulchan aruch. So anything canned is automatically not an issue because you wouldn't serve canned food to a king.
What about Bishul after Bishul? If you get cooking for something, does that help?
Once a thing is not acceptable, once it's come Asur in terms of Bishul Yisrael and other things, more cooking is not going to undo it. Once it's finished. That's another thing. Some things which are part baked or part cooked, and it's not yet fully edible, then you can, a Jew finishing it will be enough. But if it's It's already edible. If it's done, just taking bread and making a toast is not going to help, or taking your canned whatever and putting it in a pot and boiling it up, it's not going to help. Once it's awesome, it's awesome. It doesn't get a problem.
Okay, Rabbi Posner. There'll be more questions and answers at the end from Rabbi Posner and Rabbi Hertz. Just to explain the Seder now, Rabbi Langer was not available to come till 12:15. That's why this time. Rabbi Langer will be here soon. Now we will hear some practical halachas from the Rabbi Hertz, who will give some practical questions and instructions. And in general, just to summarize, Rabbi Posner gives some clarity, a little more in Hashkachas. As always, the Rabbanim are available for questions. We have the number, Rabbi Hertz and Rabbi Posner. That's what I do when I have a question. Okay.